Now, let's go to this conversation now this month, marking a year since South Africa was grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force. And this was a huge reputational blow for the country. But how much progress has been made to come off the list? Let's speak to Dr. Azar Jammine, who Econometrix Director and Chief Economist, who joins us live now. Thank you so much, Dr. Jammine, for your time. How much of a knock, firstly, would you say our reputation as a country has taken by South Africa being grey-listed?
I think we have suffered some negative impact, and part of the reason why the rand is as weak as it is at the moment is due to that. But I have to emphasize part of the reason, because there are many other factors that have contributed towards the currency's weakness. I would not, however, overstate the impact of grey listing either. There are some very reputable countries economically who have also been grey listed. I saw, for example, that the United Arab Emirates has been grey listed, and yet they have been performing outstandingly well in terms of the corruption perceptions index, for example. So, I think one needs to just treat the whole issue with a bit of caution, say that it's not a good thing. And there's a difference between the impact on reputation and the impact on the costs of doing business. The costs of doing business undoubtedly have increased. There is much more surveillance needed and administrative hassles involved in undertaking financial transactions with South Africa now than was the case before. And that is seen as a cost by ordinary businessmen.
So given what you've just said then, to say that do exercise caution, but also don't, ignore it completely, should then all the efforts go towards making sure that we come off this list, or looking at the fact that we strengthen some of the systems that we need to, given the concerns that were raised by the Financial Action Task Force, like not being serious, for example, about preventing financial crimes or having proactive measures to deal with this?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's a big benefit, ironically, in having been grey-listed, in that it has forced us to block gaps that have existed in terms of allowing illicit trade to take place. We've seen already in the latest budget the determination of the authorities to clamp down on illegal tobacco and liquor trading, for example. And there are many other such examples that have had to be tightened. There's also been the need for estate agents to come clean and in such a way as to stop transactions that might be very fraudulent from taking place. So to that extent, I think it's served a useful purpose. Based on the comments made by Ismail Momoniat from the National Treasury, who is directed with the responsibility of trying to get us out of grey listing, apparently South Africa's representations at a meeting that was held in Paris last week were extremely favourably received. So I think we are on the right path in this particular instance, and it's going to assist in re-establishing the health of many of our institutions, our financial institutions in particular.
And talking about financial institutions and what we've seen over time, I wonder how much, improvement have we also made, or lack thereof, when it comes to some of the cases around state capture. You look at the fact that there's also been this focus on law enforcement, especially when you think about the volumes and volumes of information that we saw coming out of that, commission.
There's no question. I think that business acknowledges and has been critical of the fact that they feel the government has not done enough yet to actually bring perpetrators of state capture to book. And that goes without saying. There are just a handful of examples that stand out, but others one sees people who've been accused of fraud still running around and without actually having served time in jail. And that is negative news when you compare it with the kind of experiences that people in Europe and the United States have had for undertaking such fraudulent activity.
I suppose then, listening to everything you've said tonight, let's not waste this opportunity, because as much as we have to treat this list with caution, but it also needs to be a moment of self-reflection, I suppose, for the country to make sure that we tighten as much as we possibly can when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to the number of, cases that are possibly being prosecuted, even where state capture is concerned.
I think you would see an enormous increase in business confidence if success were to be identified in bringing perpetrators of faulty deals of malfeasance to book. And one can only hope that we are making progress in that regard. I suppose it's a favorable thing that we are actually concentrating. It's a good thing that we actually talking about this even on air like this publicly, because in many other countries it wouldn't actually happen. And just to put things into perspective, a lot was made of the decline in the corruption perception index of South Africa from 43 to 41 this year. But to put it into perspective, South Africa is still no worse than about the average country in the world in terms of perceptions of corruption. And the deterioration has been a little shallower than has been the case in many other instances. I'm not saying that there is no corruption. All I'm saying is that we are highlighting it to a greater extent than is the case in many other jurisdictions. We need to convert that into actual action far more expeditiously for us to see a meaningful improvement in perceptions about about our corruption.
Thank you very much for those interesting insights, Dr. Jammine. Appreciate your time. That was Econometrix Director and Chief Economist, Dr. Azar Jammine. And this, of course, as we told you, around, a year on South Africa being grey listed. And there's been a lot of talk about this. And you've also seen us covering various stories that we're looking at South Africa's efforts to try and get us off the list. So interesting insights there to just hear how far, South Africa has come in the year since we found ourselves on this particular